Zelensky's general highlighted Russia's reported troop shortage, telling audiences that Moscow is facing significant manpower gaps even as Russian leadership publicly projects confidence and continued resolve. Putin is reportedly diverting troops and leaving battalions in disarray, Kyiv's commanders say, describing chaotic redeployments and organizational breakdowns that underscore the strain on Russia's combat formations. Moscow has reportedly devised a bizarre rule to overcome the dearth, promoting rhetoric encouraging citizens to have 3 children, a policy move critics say mixes demographic engineering with military necessity as Kremlin planners seek long-term manpower remedies. As Kyiv claims Russia is struggling, Putin's army has launched what analysts call its fiercest attacks, a surge of offensive operations that appears aimed at seizing the initiative despite underlying personnel and logistical problems. Ukraine burned for hours on end as Russian missiles hammered cities, leaving swathes of urban areas ablaze, civilian infrastructure devastated, and first responders racing to contain fires and attend to the mounting humanitarian crisis. Amid the Russia-Ukraine war, Ukraine claimed Moscow has begun digging into its reserve divisions, arguing that the Kremlin is being forced to mobilize deeper-tier units to plug persistent manpower gaps at the front. Ukrainian Commander-in-Chief Oleksandr Syrskyi said Russia cut into its reserve divisions, asserting that Russian commanders have had to call up reserve formations that would normally be held back for contingency use. Syrskyi claimed Kyiv had reduced Russia's ability to replace losses on the battlefield, saying Ukrainian operations and attrition tactics have significantly eroded Moscow's depth of deployable forces and its capacity for rapid replenishment. Russia raised financial incentives for contract service but still faces shortages, increasing pay and enlistment bonuses to attract recruits while continuing to report shortfalls in trained personnel for sustained combat operations. Moscow continues to recruit former prisoners to replenish its frontline units, a controversial measure that analysts say reflects desperation and raises concerns about unit cohesion and discipline among newly formed combat groups. Details were reported in a Militarny report on July 1, which provided sourcing and specifics behind Kyiv's claims about Russian force depletion and the measures Moscow is taking to sustain its war effort. Soldiers from reduced strategic reserve divisions are being sent to active fronts, with commanders reallocating those once held back formations to plug immediate gaps and sustain combat operations where losses have been heaviest. Russia recently expanded brigades into divisions, including marine and motorized units, a structural escalation intended to create larger, more capable formations even as manpower and equipment strains persisted. In 2025, the 155th Marine Brigade was reorganized into the 55th Division, according to Ukraine's Commander-in-Chief Oleksandr Syrskyi, a transformation Kyiv says reflects Moscow's effort to field higher-numbered divisional formations despite chronic shortages. The 200th Motorized Rifle Brigade was turned into the 71st Division in the same period, another example of brigade-to-division conversions that Russian authorities reportedly pursued to bolster unit counts on paper and on the map. Due to persistent personnel shortages, the formation of these new divisions has been halted, as recruitment shortfalls and training bottlenecks prevented Moscow from fully staffing and equipping the upgraded formations. Russian command now diverts troops to fill gaps in existing units and formations, prioritizing immediate battlefield needs by reassigning personnel from reserve or support roles, rather than waiting to complete new divisional structures. The Speaker of Russia's Federation Council demanded that Russian citizens focus on building large families, urging a national cultural shift toward higher birth rates as a long-term remedy to the country's demographic challenges. Valentina Matvienko also said Russians should establish stable careers and aim to have at least 3 children, framing the call as both an economic and social recommendation meant to secure future workforce and defense needs. The announcement came as Russia faced its worst demographic crisis in modern history, with policymakers warning that sustained population decline threatens economic growth, military recruitment, and the country's long-term sustainability. Some 1.222 million babies were born in 2024, followed by a further roughly 4% decline to about 272,000 births in the first quarter of 2026, statistics officials cite to illustrate the depth and speed of the ongoing population downturn. Details on instructions for Russia's citizens were reported by United 24 Media, which outlined the Federation Council speaker's remarks and placed them in the wider context of Moscow's attempts to reverse demographic trends. As the Ukrainian general highlighted Russia's shortages, NATO faced its own troubles, underscoring how demographic and force generation issues are creating strategic headaches for multiple actors across the Euro-Atlantic security landscape. With the Ukraine war showing no signs of ending, one NATO nation is facing growing difficulties in filling the ranks of a key military formation. The challenge has raised concerns about long-term force readiness. Germany is struggling to attract enough volunteers for deployment near Russia's borders. Officials say recruitment targets remain difficult to achieve. The Brigade forms part of Germany's broader military expansion plan in Eastern Europe. The initiative is intended to strengthen NATO's eastern flank. The unit is expected to reach full operational readiness by the end of 2027 with nearly 4,800 soldiers. Current plans call for a substantial increase in personnel over the coming years. Officials say around 1,800 personnel are currently stationed with the brigade. Thousands of positions are still vacant and awaiting recruitment. Personnel shortages are most severe in specialist roles, including IT, reconnaissance, and engineering units. These positions are considered critical to the brigade's effectiveness. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius said operational readiness will take priority over voluntary service if necessary. He emphasized the importance of meeting military requirements. Germany's military leadership has warned that compulsory measures could be considered if volunteer numbers remain insufficient. The comments have intensified debate over future recruitment policies. A major recruitment campaign included barracks tours and organized trips for soldiers and their families. The effort was designed to encourage more personnel to join the deployment. Reports indicate that the campaign has failed to fully close the brigade's personnel gaps. Recruitment challenges continue despite the outreach efforts. Berlin is building up the 45th Armored Brigade as a flagship military unit based in Lithuania. The formation is expected to play a central role in regional defense planning. The unit, activated in 2025, represents Germany's first permanent foreign deployment since World War II. Its establishment marks a significant shift in German military policy. The brigade is stationed near the Belarus border and close to Russia's Kaliningrad region. The location is considered strategically important by NATO planners. German officials say the country must be prepared for the possibility of a conflict with Russia by 2029. They argue that readiness efforts cannot be delayed. Moscow has criticized NATO's expansion and accused Berlin of pursuing what it describes as revanchist militarization. Russian officials have repeatedly voiced opposition to the deployment. Russia says it has no intention of attacking NATO countries, but continues to warn against what it views as Western escalation. The Kremlin argues that further military buildup increases regional tensions. Russia launched one of its biggest attacks on Kyiv just hours after President Zelensky warned that a major strike could be imminent. Waves of cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and drones targeted the Ukrainian capital overnight between July 1st and 2nd. Ukrainian officials said at least one person was killed, while 11 others were injured in the attacks. Explosions rocked all 10 districts of Kyiv as Russian strikes hit residential buildings, hotels, and key parts of the city. A 9-story residential building partially collapsed, trapping several residents beneath the rubble. A hotel in central Kyiv caught fire, while multiple buildings across the capital were left engulfed in flames. Ukraine said Russia carried out the assault in coordinated waves, beginning with drones before launching ballistic and cruise missiles. Officials also claimed some of the strikes involved hypersonic Zircon missiles aimed at Kyiv. Thousands of residents spent hours sheltering inside Kyiv's metro stations as air defense systems worked to intercept the barrage.